Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 28 years old and I have a story to tell. Life can be full of surprises, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I've learned that even in the darkest times, there's always hope. Let me start from the beginning. When I was 8, I lost my mom. It was a rainy day and we were driving home from the store. The car slid on the wet road and crashed. My mom didn't survive. I still remember the paramedics pulling me out of the car, their faces filled with sadness. After that, my dad tried his best, but he was heartbroken. A year later, he remarried, and everything changed. My stepmom, Clara, wasn't mean, but she kept her distance. She had 2 kids of her own, and I felt like there wasn't room for me in her life. My dad spent most of his time trying to make her happy, so I often felt alone. I missed my mom and the way things used to be. When I turned 18, I left for college. I wanted a fresh start. That's where I met Daniel. He was confident, kind, and made everyone laugh. We became close friends, and soon we fell in love. Daniel made me feel special, like I finally belonged somewhere. By the time we graduated, we couldn't imagine life without each other. After college, we moved to the city together. Daniel got a job in finance, and I started working as a graphic designer. Things were going great, or so I thought. Daniel came from a rich family, but I didn't think much about it. His parents, however, did. They were wealthy and well-known, and they had high expectations for Daniel. The first time I met them was at a fancy dinner at their mansion. Walking into their house felt like stepping into another world. Everything was shiny and expensive. Daniel held my hand and said, "Don't worry, they'll love you." But when his mom, Victoria, saw me, I could tell she didn't approve. Her smile was fake, and her eyes looked me up and down like she was judging me. His dad, Charles, barely said a word to me all night. I tried hard to impress them. I complimented their home, asked about their work, and laughed at their jokes. But nothing worked. Later, I overheard Victoria whispering to Charles, "She's sweet, but she's not right for Daniel." My heart sank. I went to the bathroom to hold back my tears. When I came back, Daniel asked if I was okay, but I just smiled and said I was fine. Over time, things got worse. Victoria would make little comments like, "It's nice to see Daniel trying something different for a change." She always said it with a smile, but I knew what she meant. It hurt, but I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause problems for Daniel. He told me not to worry about it, but I could see how much he wanted their approval. One night, Daniel's parents hosted a big charity event and invited us. I spent hours getting ready, hoping to make a good impression. When we got there, Victoria walked up to me and said, "Emily, have you ever been to an event like this before?" Her tone was polite, but I could tell she was mocking me. "No, but it's beautiful," I said, trying to stay calm. "Well, there's a first time for everything," she replied with a fake smile before walking away. I felt humiliated, but Daniel told me to ignore her. After that night, Daniel started acting differently. He became distant, and we argued more often. One night, after another awkward dinner with his family, I finally asked him, "Why do you let them treat me like this?" "It's not that simple," he said. "They're my parents. I can't just cut them off." "I'm not asking you to cut them off," I said. "I just want you to stand up for me." "I'm trying, Emily, but it's hard," he replied. That night he slept on the couch, and I cried myself to sleep. The breaking point came when Victoria invited me to lunch. I hoped she wanted to make peace, but instead she said, "Emily, I think it's best if you step aside and let Daniel find someone more suitable." "With all due respect, Mrs. James, Daniel's happiness should matter more than his bank account," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Happiness is fleeting. Stability lasts forever," she said before leaving. I was stunned. When I told Daniel what happened, he got upset, but not at his mom. "Why did you go?" he asked. "You should have known she'd say something like that." "So now it's my fault?" I asked, feeling hurt. "I'm not saying that, but you're not making things easier," he replied. That's when I realized we were fighting a losing battle. The next morning, I packed my things and left. Daniel tried to stop me, but I told him, "I love you, but I need to love myself more." The weeks that followed were painful. I moved into a small apartment and focused on work, but the pain of losing Daniel stayed with me. Then one day, I got a call from Victoria. Her voice sounded shaky. "Emily, I need to see you," she said. When we met, she looked tired and vulnerable. "I'm sorry," she said. "I let my pride get in the way. Daniel hasn't been the same since you left." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I realize now that money and status mean nothing if my son is miserable," she said. "Please, come back." I wanted to believe her, but I needed time. "I'll think about it," I said. In the end, it was Daniel who made the difference. He showed up at my door one rainy evening, soaking wet. "I've been a fool," he said. "I let them come between us, and I'll regret it forever if you don't give me another chance." It wasn't easy, but we worked things out. This time, we set boundaries with his family and focused on our relationship. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. After we reconciled, things felt different, better, but also more challenging. We decided to move into a smaller apartment together, away from the shadow of Daniel's parents. It was our way of starting fresh. The first few weeks were blissful. We spent our evenings cooking together, talking about our future, and making plans for the life we wanted to build. One day, Daniel surprised me with a weekend trip to the mountains. "Just the two of us," he said, smiling. The trip was magical. We hiked during the day and sat by the fire at night, talking about everything from childhood memories to our dreams for the future. For the first time in months, I felt truly happy. But happiness has a way of being tested. When we returned, Daniel received a call from his mother. "We're hosting a family dinner next week. You and Emily should come," she said. Daniel hesitated, but eventually agreed. "Maybe it's time to give them another chance," he told me. I wasn't sure. "Do you think they've really changed?" I asked. "I don't know, but I want to believe they have," he replied. Reluctantly, I agreed to go. When the night of the dinner arrived, I felt a knot in my stomach. As we walked into the house, I noticed how quiet it was. The usual chatter and laughter were replaced with an awkward silence. Victoria greeted us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, it's nice to see you," she said, her tone neutral. The dinner started off uneventfully. Charles talked about a new business venture, and Victoria asked Daniel about work. No one directed any questions my way. I tried to join the conversation, but every time I spoke, the room seemed to grow quieter. It was clear that I still wasn't fully welcome. Then, toward the end of the meal, Victoria cleared her throat. "Emily, I've been thinking about our last conversation," she said. "I want to apologize for the things I said. I was wrong to judge you." I was taken aback. "Thank you," I said, unsure of what else to say. But before I could process her words, Charles chimed in. "We just want what's best for Daniel. You have to understand that." "I do," I replied. "But what's best for Daniel should include what makes him happy." The room fell silent again. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Emily's right," he said, "and I'm happy with her." After that night, things began to improve, slowly but surely. Victoria and I started having occasional phone calls, and she even invited me out for coffee once. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Daniel and I focused on building our life together. We talked about getting married someday, and even started saving for a home. Looking back, I realize how far we've come. Life isn't always easy, but it's the challenges that make the good moments even more special. Through everything, I've learned to stand up for myself and to value the people who truly care about me. And most importantly, I've learned that love is worth fighting for, as long as both people are